Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Office Hours with Jess. So, today I'm going to be talking about how many schools should you apply to when applying to grad school? This is a question that I've been getting a lot from many students who are applying, and I feel like this is something that's good to think about when you're early on in the application process, aka like this kind of summertime before the fall application cycle starts. Especially because you need that initial list of like, okay, where are you going to apply? So I always get the question of how many schools should I apply to? And I know that it really just depends person to person. Like, okay, are you only willing to go to like these top two schools and nowhere else? Then only apply to two schools. But if you are open and more flexible, I would say that any range between at least what I've seen is 5 to maybe 15. And those are on the like extreme sides of not many and very many. And of course, I always tell people it's like a huge numbers game when you're applying to grad school. So you want to apply to as many schools as possible, but given the fact that you have time constraints, because the more schools you apply to, it is a little bit more work, although you can, for the most part, submit, I would say like 75% of the same application materials to each school, maybe even more than that. But more importantly, the financial constraint of the application fee that each school has. So sometimes it might not make that much sense to apply to like 15 schools, but if you really want to maximize your chances, the more schools, the better. And how do you figure out which school? So I always tell people you want a good spread, no matter how many schools you're applying to, of sort of top tier, mid tier, and more safety type schools. You cannot only apply to like only Ivies and only elite institutions, unless you are only willing to go there and nowhere else. But if you want to really maximize your chances of getting into different programs, I would definitely have a nice spread of schools. And a good way to figure out how to have that nice smattering is through this link. I have it in the description of this video, but it's just the US News rankings for public health schools in the US. This is actually a more useful tool than you would think, because it just tells you in a kind of objective way, okay, like here are the top 10, here's like the mid 20s, and here's like what's after that. And just make sure you have schools that fall across the list and they're not all just bunched at the top. So that's a good resource that I recommend to everyone to use when they're coming up with their list of schools to apply to. And then, of course, a huge thing you want to think about is location. This is a little bit less objective and more subjective. So thinking about where you see yourself wanting to live for, the duration of the program, where your family is, how close or far away you're willing to be from them, where your partner is, if that's something that you need to factor into the equation, what the weather is like. As you know, for me, it was very miserable being in the snow for 6 years. So you have to take that into consideration too. And then once you've narrowed down your list and created a list of about 5 to 15, again, or whatever number that feels good to you, schools that have a nice spread of rankings, I would actually then look up and just make sure that each school has like a public health department and mission and faculty and people doing the work that you would want to do in public health. It doesn't have to be a perfect sort of exact match, but just make sure that you are going to, for the most part, be happy there. And you will be. I think most public health programs have such a broad sort of spread of things now. I don't think there really will be a place that you might not feel like you belong, but just make sure that the program meets what you would be looking for in a graduate program. And that would sort of be your last step. And then once you have that, you'll have a nice list to go with. Of course, it's going to change across the application process and as you're putting your application together, et cetera. And that is okay. But this will help just get you started and feel like, okay, I have a point to go from in applying. So those are my key tips on putting together your school list. So don't forget to like and subscribe, especially if you want to rank this video very highly. And I'll see you on another episode of Office Hours with Jess. Thank you.